Welcome back to the Crooked Spine Show. All of us deal with stress on a daily basis. This can affect our physical and emotional health. Jeffery Williams has helped 10,000 clients over the last 20 years reset their bodies and minds to become people with a high quality of mental and physical health for a long time. Let's understand his wide range of teachings that help people reach their human potential. We start with understanding exactly how wellness works in our questions today in our interview, along with what is vitalism and how has coaching aligned with vitalism, his coaching, along with working with clients with top stressors in their lives. What are the top stressors? And when the body's under stress, how are the physical and emotional parts of the body linked? Is this nervous system or part of this? Another question I ask is, what is the autonomic system? And how does it react under chronic stress? And how do we reset it? Along with his certain techniques he uses, such as movement and breathing, goes actually how to breathe properly, reduce your nervous system stress, get your body to relax better. Also, he explains also his academy. They've done a great job helping other people become practitioners to help other people in their realm get better and healthy. And also with some takeaways, some mindsets. We understand exactly what Jeff does and helps people over long term. So, show notes, we also have links to their website, also about the Alphabiotics program, too, also on their Facebook and Instagram, and even our previous podcasts too, as YouTube channels or on our podcast apps and Spotify. So check out this interview, learn how to deal with your stress properly on your own. At that point, I'll see you in the next interview. Have a great day. I'm here with Jeffery Williams. What I want to find is the reason and the fix for feeling stressed. Okay. I want Jeffery to share his wisdom. All of us deal with stress on a daily basis, as we know, especially after holidays. This is holidays of 2024 based on, and when you watch this actual video or listen to the podcast, all this deal with stress on a daily basis. It's going to affect our physical and emotional health. Jeffery Williams has helped 10,000 plus clients over the last 20 years reset their mindset to become people with a high quality of mental and physical health. Let's understand his wide range of teachings that help people reach their human potential. All right, my friends. Jeffery, introduce yourself, my friend. So tell me what you're all about.
Well, man, you just did a cool little summary. Thank you for that. For me, and you mentioned stress, I find stress is at the core, at a causal level for all dis-ease, whether, like you said, that is physical, mental, social, or cosmological disease. What I find is that if we don't have balance in our autonomics, then we're not going to have balance or vitality and wellness in the rest of our life. So at my work, I focus on measurably finding out if someone's either in balance or out of balance in their autonomics, in their brain, and then work to bring about a state of balance that is measurable, that then we can track and find out how their nervous system is learning to adapt to the stress in their life. Because as you know, and you just said, there's stress is rampant, right? It's everywhere. We're not going to be able to remove all the stressors. But what we can do is help people to better adapt to the stress that's in our life and recognize what is truly life-threatening and be able to discern those from the bills and the bosses and the traffic, which actually aren't threatening our life, but often put us into that sympathetic dominant, out of balance in our autonomics, so that we're not able to rest and digest and grow and repair in the way that we're designed to.
And explain to you, because this is exactly what I tell my patients, is my job, a healthcare practitioner's job, is to help you deal with the stress of your day. So it doesn't affect you physically, mentally, psychologically. Explain the autonomic system and what is that for someone that has never heard that word before.
Yeah, that's awesome. Perfect place to start. So our brain and nervous system have what's called in the autonomic nervous system. And part of that system is it's in two branches. So you have sympathetic and parasympathetic. And the way those are supposed to work is kind of like a teeter-totter. And so what happens is you'll typically go into more sympathetic during the day. So that teeter-totter, imagine sympathetic increasing during the daylight hours when you're active and engaged and doing life. And then at night, it's supposed to switch. Sympathetic slows down and parasympathetic picks up. And so we get to rest and digest, eliminate all the waste we created during the day, catch up on all that growth and repair. So what happens is that stress impacts our autonomics, because if I am facing a threat, if I'm facing something that's of imminent danger, imagine that we're still hunter-gatherer bodies dropped into modern sedentary times. So these bodies are meant to move. We've been outside our whole lives, and now we're all in boxes and checking out screens, and we have all these pressure of finances and all that other stuff. So if we get triggered into a response, which we could easily call fight or flight,
exactly
same kind of response that if I were picking berries down at the river and a bear showed up, I love that response. I love that heightened sympathetic, because it takes my blood flow, glucose and oxygen, moves it to my limbs. My brain lateralizes into one side so that I can have more tension to fight or protect or run. Gets, like I said, out to my limbs. The limbic system with the amygdala starts to run our perception and that back part of our brain. And it's really good for getting out of a dangerous situation. The problem
it's almost a great defense mechanism, right? If it works well.
Exactly. And survival. We all want to survive. It's innate. It's inside of each of us that we want to survive. So what happens is this older part of our brain can move bigger neurons faster. It can override the more subtle human levels of function. And we become a little bit more animalistic, and we can save our own lives. So since survival is such a high priority, when that part of our brain, the sympathetic part, takes over, it's more outer reactive. It does a great job of keeping us safe. But at the same time, it's pulling that blood flow, glucose and oxygen innervation from our vital organs, from that parasympathetic side of our system. So the longer we're in it, the more symptomatically we're going to show up. So we're going to have stuff show up in our lives that are trying to say, hey, we got to resolve this, because if we stay in this system, just sympathetic, the acidic waste is going to build up. The processes we're going to get behind on. We're not digesting very well. Our immune system isn't working well. Our tissue repair isn't working well, because the brain's saying we're allocating resources to survive right now. And that's going to override all those other functions. And so in my work, I work to, and it sounds like you do as well, to really work with the brain and nervous system and the spine to get people back into balance so that their body feels like, okay, whatever that was, that's done now, and I can finally rest, and I can start the repair on my body and get caught up.
It's almost that stress response is supposed to be short-term only. When we have stress every day of our lives, when we get in the morning, when we go to bed, even when we're sleeping too, it wears itself out, correct?
Absolutely. I call it beta chemistry. And so when you're we want to be in alpha chemistry. So alpha chemistry is like when we have autonomic balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic, we idle, like your car's engine, we idle in what's called alpha waves, right above theta. We're in this state where we're like relaxed and content, but we're aware and awake and alert. Whereas when we speed up to respond to something or react to something outside of us, we go into beta. And those beta waves, Western society and science has kind of normalized those, because in science, one of the things that can be a limiter is that they'll take a huge sampling. I say, here's 100,000 people, and look, everyone's in beta, so that's normal. I disagree with it.
It's not normal.
Right. It's average, but not normal. But it's so easy, right? Like you see it all the time. We're like average and normal, they get overweight, and that's not necessarily true or good for us. And so, that's a big piece, is just helping people recognize that having this balance and having ourselves idling in alpha, where both hemispheres, they both provide two distinct lenses on life. And to live integrated and to live vitally and to be able to like hold your center, right? If you imagine like a top that is spinning, and if you look down on that top and you see half of it's black, half of it's white, if you're spin that top and you're able to stay really centered, the black and the white, what happens? They become a gray, a neutral tone in which you can integrate, or you can accept the upside and the downside. Say the black and the white represents two halves of a situation. When you're centered, you can hold both of those without falling off. But if you tend towards being in your limbic system, in the amygdala, the downside of that fight or flight response is that it's playing predator prey games. So it wants to get away from the pain and towards the pleasure, right? Away from the predator and towards the prey. So the part of our brain that takes over starts to favor one side, and that top is wobbling. And so how many of you out there, and how many of your patients have you seen that oscillate between like, oh, life's so bad, life's so good, life's so bad, life's so good, right? That's a part of being in that level of function in your brain. And when you move out of that and you start to come into the prefrontal cortex and you start to use your neocortex, your human mind, you're able to hold both sides or all sides of every situation and stay centered.
You almost see things as they are, not as they can be in a worse condition. It's almost being I want to call the optimist versus the pessimist. Hey, let's look at the whole picture versus when I'm under stress or that alert response is always there, my perception may not be always right. How would someone know if for example, your first interview with somebody, that they're in the limbic, the stress response, the sympathetic response state? How would you know?
I'm going to pull up a little graphic that just happens to be right in front of me. But so measurably, what happens is if, like I mentioned, whenever you go into sympathetic, so that half of the autonomic system, it's going to lateralize brain function, meaning that one hemisphere is going to become dominant. Exactly. And so when someone comes in, we do a series of testing and they lay down on the table. And what that means, so if I go into my left brain, left brain controls the right side of the body and vice versa, right controls the left. If I go into my left, I'm going to see excessive tension on the right side of my body and the right side of the spine. So in the neck, if I'm palpating, I'm going to feel, wow, there's more tension most likely for most folks in the right side of the neck than there is the left. As I go down the spine, there's going to be more excessive tension, I mean contracted tissue along the spine that actually shortens that side of the body. So you might be able to see this, and what this is describing is like our goal is to get you in balance where your both hemispheres are turned on, and that means you've got tonus in the tissue all up and down the spine. Where most people go into, this is the right hemisphere, we're going to see a distortion in the physical body, and then left hemisphere, it's the other way where we're going to have right side. So we have a system of metrics called the stages of balance. And so when someone comes in, I assess, are you in balance or out of balance? And then what stage of balance or imbalance are you in? And the longer you've been in it, or the more sort of stack of stressors. If you've been in a car accident and you go and a month later you get in a huge fight with your partner, there could be a secondary twist, where you have one shoulder high and then the other hip high or something like that. And so what we're doing is we're measuring, not only are we measuring that distortion, we're also measuring response time in each limb. So when I test, I'm finding out like, hey, if I give you an input to your right leg and your left leg, how's the response time and the ability to meet that input? Same with your arms. And so at first, if you're like this, most of the time, right side's tense, high and tight, and you can respond. You're already in response on the right side. So when I go to test kinesiologically, I'm finding out that, wow, you're already in response. And the other side, there's either no response or a big lag in your ability to respond.
That's the balance, right? The balance of being too tight and then too weak.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you want, ultimately a healthy individual has tissue that's ready to do one of two things, either contract or expand and relax, right? We want to be in a state of tonus so that we can do either or. When you're in a stress state, you're already in excessive tension on one side with excessive weakness opposing it. And of course, there's a zigzag of tension down the spine because
it's almost like your body has the center of gravity, but it's doing it in such a scenic route type of way versus it's a straight path.
Yep. Yeah. And you brought up gravity, which if you start to think about the kind of, distortion that out of balance does, is gravity doesn't stop, right? So if I've got a distortion in my musculoskeletal body, now gravity is accelerating degeneration in certain areas of my body because of that distortion. If I've got balance and both my hemispheres are working, my tissues in tonus, I'm at least able to meet with my own forces of levity, the forces of gravity. So I have a balance in how I'm breaking down instead of a distortion in that breakdown.
And then do you test someone's, obviously when they're in position, do you test their motion to their movement patterns?
Yeah. So we have that you're bringing up kind of a second piece of what we do. And so the first thing is this way to reset the autonomic nervous system and bring it back into balance. And the second piece is we have a movement system called EDGU, EDGU. And if you think of the spine as the edge of you, the edge between the two halves of you, right. When you move, movement is the fastest way to sculpt the brain. And so if you have movement that is rhythmic, that crosses your midline, you can sculpt a balanced brain. So what often happens is that we teach a series of movements and we introduce those a little bit at a time so that a person can not only learn to maintain their brain balance and their spinal tissue. So we have really beautiful tissue like we just described before that can maintain their tonus, but also they can assess themselves. They can be like, if I do these movements and one part of it's like, that's really weird, or I can't quite turn my hand right when I go this way, it's helping reveal a little glitch in the system.
Perfect. It's almost like your body knows how to reset itself, just giving it the motion, the awareness that there's a problem.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to. You're not like, people aren't robots. So can you get their body to work and self-adjust, self-heal to where now things are more normal, more balanced, and handle gravity like it should normally? Just people don't move enough to actually experience that, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple things like we mentioned. We're basically hunter-gatherers that are plopped into a sedentary society. So we have to move, right? And the right kind of movement is critical. And so that's why Edu does a lot of these crossing the midline. So remember how we mentioned right hemisphere controls left and left controls right. When we cross our midline with our arms and we are doing certain motions, we're creating or we're causing cross-modal communication. So the corpus callosum lights up every time I bring my right arm into my left hemisphere of my body. So in that field, what we're doing is we're creating these connections, and this movement style actually induces an alpha state as well. So we're really focused on, like I said, brain and nervous system and autonomic balance. And so figured out the right kind of movement that induces that state and help nurture and strengthen, again, that center, that ability to be the spinning top. And no matter what's going on out here, I'm still able to stay centered.
And going back to understanding someone's initial situation, we talked about the physical aspect of their imbalances for one, two, and resetting that. How do we understand where they are psychologically, mentally before they start treatment with you or go through your process?
That's such a beautiful question, and it highlights this idea that I just touched on briefly, that when we're stuck in an autonomic imbalance, so especially in a sympathetic state, that limbic system takes over. And if you can imagine, and some people are probably familiar with the idea of the drama triangle, where you've got the victim, the perpetrator, and the hero or rescuer, victim, villain, people call it different things. But that triad of roles, if you assess yourself and you go, wow, where do I feel like a victim? And who do I feel like is making me a victim? And who do I wish would come help me? Or, what do I think could come help me? When you start to recognize that you're playing those games, you know that you're in a stress state. So the way you're going to psychologically perceive and process the information in your world is going to be limited by that physiological level of function. So when I'm in my limbic system, I'm pre-mammalian, reptilian at best, right? So I'm not going to be like a human. The beautiful thing about a human is it's that we are designed, we have the capacity to see objectively with our prefrontal cortex. So that means I can, like I said, hold both sides or all sides of a situation, not get stuck in polarized polarity games, which we see played out right in our politics and so many things. You go online and you can see it, right?
Yeah, that's the average, not normal. That's the average.
Exactly. And you see that out there, and it's being played out in so many ways. And the big disadvantage for us as human beings being stuck in a stress state is that we can get played by those games. Like we get caught up in them. Algorithms are set to extract our attention and get us to buy things, because when you're in that state, you're vulnerable to those sort of plays.
Just thank God for Amazon has a 30-day free return if you're a Prime member. So
exactly.
Purchase it. I don't really need that. Let me get it out of here.
Why did I do that? Yeah, exactly. So a lot of it is, back to the question, how do you assess? So I do, ask them to give an honest assessment of how they think and feel and behave on a regular basis. And a lot of times that reveals a lot, because if you're really honest, with most of us tend to just, oh yeah, I'm doing pretty good. And it's like, well, what are you really spending your time doing?
Yeah, tell someone on the street that, but I'm here to help you. How can I help you if you want to be honest with me?
Exactly. And when that is revealed, it's like, oh, wow, I actually am, spending way more time doing this than I say I am, or I'm not spending as much time doing this as I say I am. And I know it's good for me. And what that typically is that also reveals what someone truly values. And that's another key piece to what is the key to unlocking your vitality and your health on all levels, is understanding what you care about, what inspires you the most, what you love, because no one has to incentivize you or motivate you to do those things. Those things you're intrinsically inspired to do. You'll do them without anyone telling you to do it. So if you can reveal what that is, you'll start to recognize that there's something for each of us, something that each of us has as the highest value or the highest inspiration, the thing that's most fulfilling. And that when you assess your life and you go, well, how much am I actually doing that? And if the answer is very little, no wonder I'm uncomfortable. No wonder I'm unhealthy. No wonder I'm having symptoms, right? There's an aspect, and you know this as a chiropractor, that you can come in and you can tune up their spine, incredibly. And if they don't take the reins in their life and start to fill it with things they love, they're still not going to love their life. Like, you can tune them up all day and every day, but if they don't make the changes to interrupt the patterns that have generated the discomfort and the symptoms, then it's just going to be on repeat, right?
It's almost like you're going, okay, I can help as one problem you have on the outside, but what's going on inside to make this problem keep coming back over and over again? Yep. You mentioned a second ago vitalism. Can you explain what vitalism is? I know it's kind of I looked at a couple of things online, but what would you explain to a way that you can actually change that over time?
Yeah, great question. In vitalism, it's really hard to find much on it, because so if you go back into the 1800s, vitalism was a key concept in the wellness world and medicine. And it's the idea that, and chiropractic is founded on a vitalistic principle, which is that well, first, the power that made the body can heal the body.
There you
go. That's classic Palmer stuff there. And also that the idea is that us as practitioners cannot heal you. Our work is to get you into the most favorable circumstances so that you heal yourself. Boom. So vitalism believes that we are more than just a bag of physical matter. We are actually energetic beings, and that energy comes from something greater than us and moves through us, and that optimizing the structure, as chiropractic does, so that energy, that vital energy that moves through us, can move through us more effectively, more optimally, more fluidly, then we're going to see increases in our health, in our life expression. So we can see vitalism is vital, right? Life. That what is going on is that we're here to express life. And life, we're tapped into something that is greater than the food we eat or the water we drink or the exercise we do or the thoughts we have. We're tapped into an energetic field, and that energetic field wants to move through us and ground into the earth. And so us becoming embodied and having a brain body and mind body connection gives us the ability to move those vital forces through us and sustains our life. It makes us healthier, more vital.
So I tell people, once you get your system in play and in your body internally is healthy, then the workout you do will be more effective. Then what you're doing to, say, cope with your stress will be a lot easier for you to do. It's almost like you're giving someone the potential now, like you mentioned earlier, the human potential to have a happier life with less work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, your workout's going to work better and your recovery is going to be faster and more effective. You're going to have, both sides of that. Sleep gets deeper, digestion gets better, immune system, you find yourself, everyone gets sick around you and you're still going because you're connected to something that's vital in your life. You're realizing that, well, these are the things I love, and each of us has, unique and equally valuable interests and gifts, whether it's being a chiropractor or being a mother or being a teacher or whatever it is. that's equally valuable, because each of us is on a unique, soul mission here to fulfill what we feel was void, missing, or lacking in our life, especially developmentally. So it's shown that whatever we perceived, especially young, 0 to 7 is the most potent part, right? Where we're like hypnagogically being programmed and conditioned. Whatever we perceive to be missing, lacking, void, or violating, we naturally, imagine those were like crushing a can, we naturally have an impulse to make the can whole again. And that is the key to finding out what you love, is like, you can do the math on it. If I find out that I really love teaching and helping others, well, what was it that I perceived missing, lacking, void, in my own being taught, or my own life experience, or my own health, that now makes me naturally, impulsively, instinctively want to help others and teach in a share education that draws forth that innate wholeness that's already in there in each person I meet.
You almost, even though you're doing it as a passion, say occupation, as a teacher, for example, you had mentioned, you're almost trying to fill your own hole too, that you missed when you were a youth.
Exactly. Yeah. They coincide, right? In the greatest, it's beautiful in the sense that most of the time we're told in our society, in so many ways, we hear this message of like, you can't really do what you want to do. You got to do these things. You have to, you should do. Those are all injected values. Those are other people's values that are being injected and projected into your life. And when you go, well, I would love to do this, I'm inspired to do this. What's so interesting, and I find it across the board, is that people who do that actually are the most selfless, not selfish people, right? They ended up being, by doing the thing that they love, they end up serving the most. They end up making the greatest impact all around them, not just for them, but it is for them too, right? It's that beautiful dance between what helps me helps others, what helps others helps me kind of situation.
You mentioned it earlier in the show too. It's finding that one thing that's your priority, that's your mission, your purpose per se. Yep. When you find that, it becomes, you have that feeling inside like, I found it. I now want to make sure I do more and more of it, because it makes you feel good, keeps you in that alpha state as much as possible, but also you're helping someone else enjoy hopefully a better life too.
Exactly. Yeah. And one way to track that is when you're doing something you love, and this, I'm sure you see this all the time with your patients. It's like when you're doing something you love, you embrace the challenges as much as you do the support in life. So that means like, if you think about a kid who's really into video games or something, they don't